Ubisoft have just released their first ever title update for Assassin's Creed Shadows with a lot of changes coming to the game that I am going to break down for you in this video in a no-nonsense fashion so you can decide if it is worth booting the game back up and logging back in. Now, the update is available to download right now and it is available for you to play, with the patch size itself starting at 11.5 gigabytes if you're on the PS5, with the Xbox Series X and S coming in at nearly 20 gigabytes. The PC is on around 16 gigabytes, I should say. Steam is sitting at 11 gigabytes and the Mac is on 9. With this patch predominantly being focused around some of the new gameplay changes coming to the game, as well as performance stability and fixing a good chunk of bugs that you have been mentioning in the comments over the last few weeks. I have seen them all and a lot of them have been fixed, but let's first go through the juicy gameplay changes first, starting with the best quality of life update of all time. And that is no exaggeration, because we can now use our horse to auto travel or auto follow any road in game, which means that when you proactively place a marker on the map or wherever you're intending to travel to, then you can just hop on your horse and activate the Pathfinder route mechanic by holding your left D-pad button, of course, until that directional line appears on the road. And then you will then see a auto follow button appear on your screen, which means you can now just go and get a drink of coffee, chill out, while your horse kind of just automatically runs you to the other side of the map, which is great. It should have been in at launch. I'm not complaining that it's been added now, especially in the first update, but hey, a very good welcome quality of life feature there. In fact, Ubisoft have also increased the speed in which your mount or horse travels through cities or villages, so there's now no need to demount and sprint through all of these residential areas, as it was quicker to do so before this patch, because it's now been buffed to a reasonable level, which means you don't need to demount, and it's also very welcome. Now, we've also seen a skill tree update here, where before the patch you could only reset the whole of the mastery skill tree in kind of one go just by pressing this reset mastery button here, but you couldn't reset each skill individually, or what Ubisoft call skill nodes, but now you can, so that's a lot less admin, which again is a very welcome update. And next up, we've got another positive change in my opinion, and that is because we can now tag items in our inventory that we want to dismantle or sell when you're at a merchant, vendor, or at your blacksmith back at the forge in the hideout, for example. So this means that we no longer need to go through each individual item and then just manually sell it or dismantle it, but rather what we can do is we can just sell everything. Well, click the sell all tagged button here at the bottom of your screen, and that is after you've tagged all the items that you don't want to keep, of course, so another big tick there. Now, Ubisoft has also resolved a bug here when interacting with vendors where you couldn't sell your trinkets, which you can now get rid of after this patch. So you've likely got a chunk of change sitting there doing nothing, so go and sell all of those hundreds of trinkets that you've looted in the last however many hours, and you should get a good return on your investment there. Now, speaking of which, when you are back in game and playing Shadows, you'll want to utilize these remapped controller buttons that Ubisoft have implemented for a quick menu shortcut. The first being that if you hold the option or select button on your controller for a couple seconds, it will now take you directly to your objective or investigation board with a single press of this button, now opening your inventory menu directly, instead of having to kind of press like 2 buttons or 3 buttons and various controller paddle clicks just to get into all of these menus, which is going to save you time over 100 hours. So it's another good quality of life fix here. Now, we've also got a huge amount of stealth combat, hideout, world improvements, graphical and achievement updates to go through. But before we do, if you are finding this no nonsense update video informative and helpful, please do leave a very quick like down below. I do very much appreciate it. And actually, I do want to take a second just to thank Cathamal, Corvus and Lex Striker for tipping me a couple bucks in the last couple Shadows videos I made for you. I really appreciate the support, guys. It does actually genuinely keep me motivated to make more for you, spending many hours in a dark room editing, so thank you very much. I am very, very grateful for that. Now, stealth improvements. We've had a few new subtle changes here that I'm going to do my best to show you the differences of what these mechanics were before the patch, but also how they now operate after the patch, with a big thanks to Nika and Jabak and Donut in our Discord for helping me analyze these changes for you in game. Link down below if you want to join and come and chat AC. Now, firstly, Ubisoft has improved their double assassination mechanic with no further context added to that statement whatsoever. But after testing it multiple times in game, the animations look to have been very subtly tidied up in terms of smoothness of their transitions rather than anything game-changing per se. And the same thing has happened here in terms of Noway's responsiveness, apparently, with Ubisoft stating it's been improved in some instances, keeping what those instances are purposefully ambiguous. But that said, movement with Noway still does feel solid, and I don't particularly have any complaints here, because tightening or improving those movements in certain instances with future updates, I think is a good thing and very welcome. Now, as for alarm bells, when you do destroy it and there is an enemy nearby, he will now come over to investigate what the noise was, whereas before this patch, it was really temperamental and even some close by just wouldn't even bother coming to investigate. So watch out for that in this update. We've also had the assassination perk on the Tool Master gear set improved, whereby after assassinating an enemy, Naue would automatically follow up by throwing a kunai or a throwing knife at another nearby enemy, resulting in a kind of double assassination here, which I think is a great perk. But the issue is it was very temperamental and it wouldn't always trigger, but this has now been resolved. And in my opinion, it's one of the best early armor sets that you can get for Naue. So do go and try that out now it's been fixed if you haven't already. But what about combat? Well, we do have more changes there to go through and a lot of important information that I think you need to know. First of all, boss fights have been improved in terms of balancing, and after Nika went back into the game and compared these encounters for pre and post updates, it seems that some of the bosses have been nerfed a little bit in terms of damage output. There's also been an improved animation upgrade for NPCs and their general behavior in the world, so they don't look as kind of plasticky or rigid or AI built. So more subtle changes here. It's not a complete revamp, but it is good to see that the team is targeting this first in their launch update or their first title update. So hopefully we get more to come in the coming months. And interestingly, when you knock out NPCs and then attack them before this patch, they would just kind of instantly stand up. And now that has been amended. So it's kind of a smoother transition into combat from them being on the floor to then meeting you face to face. And I will put a comparison up here so you can kind of see. And if we combine that with Yasuke now not being able to block attacks with his Teppo rifle after being dismounted, which I actually kind of liked. I think that he should be able to block lots of incoming attacks with his rifle. I think that should be a constant thing in this game, but alas, not anymore. That has been fixed. He's also now able to call his mount whilst in combat with his weapon unsheathed, like a proper samurai, where he wasn't able to do that before the patch. And he's also now not able to perform brutal assassinations with his ranged weapons, which again, in my opinion, is a bit of a shame. I think he should be able to do that, but sticking on Yasuke a little longer, he now will no longer miss an enemy when you activate specifically his power dash ability. So if they're about to attack you and then you triggered this ability as well as others, they would potentially miss your target, but this now should work every time. And as for Naue, there was a pretty decent bug where she disarmed enemies after you would spam light attacks against them in game, and unfortunately this has been removed as well, as it wasn't supposed to happen, but it was inadvertently a pretty good perk for a weapon, so hopefully we'll see that in a future update in the future. But what about world and exploration upgrades? Do we have anything decent to go through here? Well, there is a couple good things. First of all, there has been an insanely impressive amount of fixes for specific quests in this game. So in the interest of your time, I'm not going to walk you through each one here, but I will leave a link down below to the patch notes in the description so you can kind of check out a specific quest that you've had issues with, because it's probably been fixed by now. That said, when exploring the world, the Pathfinder mechanic has been improved and it shouldn't bug or freak or glitch out on you if you're in the middle of the wilderness and you want a route out of that thick forest that you found yourself in. Secondly, Naue can no longer enter Yasuke's Kofun tombs, which she could do before this patch, as well as multiple world glitches or bugs where you fell through the world and then you had to reload a previous save to kind of resolve this situation. This unfortunately happened to me quite a lot actually, so it's good to see this has been fixed in this patch. Additionally, all sync points are now functional, whereas I know some of you in the comments said that you had issues with them not triggering or appearing on your map, but unfortunately they don't unfog the map, but they have been fixed now, so we can't have everything. Now, a big update here. There were issues when you couldn't claim your weekly rewards in the Animus Vault reward section of the game, which kind of defeats the purpose of having it as an incentive to play this game. Well, this has now been addressed, so go and spend your Helix fragments if you have them saved and you ran into troubles here, and go get yourself some cool gear for free. But let's now blitz through some hideout improvements, because it was very poorly optimized at launch and there was a lot of issues with it. And let's start with the good news, because the hideout has now had its 30 FPS cap removed on performance mode, so it's now uncapped, alongside various stability and visual improvements made to the build mode feature in the hideout, which means that you shouldn't be lagging, stuttering, glitching, or your PC or console sounding like it's going to explode when you do fast travel back to the hideout. But if you still have issues after this update, please do let everybody know down below in the comments, as I know the devs actually do watch these videos and are listening to community feedback, which in fairness is why they've done so much with this update, reading YouTube comments, not just on my channel, but all across. So fair play to them. In fact, Reality is a Sin, Palms, and Turkish Q, as you can see here, I hope that you are happier now, because after this update, this hideout should work as intended. They've also fixed the 10% XP gain you get from building the Tera building, because it wasn't correctly applying to both characters, but now it is. Additionally, transmog bugs and armor sets in the gallery have been fixed, whereas before they weren't then showing the right armor sets that you selected or you chose to wear, which was quite irritating actually. And unfortunately, we have picked up a little bit of an engraving nerf at the forge here, that being this perk, which increased your affliction build up by 600%, meaning you could almost instantly apply a full poison, knockout, or daze affliction debuff to an enemy, which was super overpowered, but this is now being nuked, unfortunately, alongside engravings, now only showing with compatible weapons in the forge, so you don't need to scroll for 10 minutes to find the one that you want to unlock specifically in the world for your weapon, which is not a nerf. That's a good thing to counter that overpowered affliction engraving. Now, sticking on engravings a little while longer, the health on weak point attack engraving has been now fixed, which means that you can restore health on a weak point attack, which is what the game calls a posture attack on a vulnerable enemy when you do equip a Tanto weapon. And this is super advantageous in terms of an engraving. It's great, and it should be equipped if you do run with a Tanto in an open combat build with Naoe for sure. But can you now get platinum in this game? And what about more graphical upgrades in this first title update? Well, the Make It Personal achievement, which you can now earn by engraving a weapon, has been fixed, where it wasn't triggering before if you did engrave a weapon that belonged to another character. That is now working. Additionally, I know a few of you also couldn't get the Limitless achievement to pop, where you need to collect a legendary piece of gear for each specific gear type. So this should now also work, or kind of just appear or pop up if you do have each piece of gear in your inventory when you do update the game and when you do log in. Now, as for visual upgrades, there has been a lot of stability and performance improvements behind the scenes, including more visual corrections in cutscenes and cinematics. But if you've got yourself a god tier PS5 Pro console, then you can take advantage of the PSSR settings, which have been added to Shadows in this title update, which, if you didn't know, is called the Spectral Super Resolution, if I remember correctly, that allows you to play games at 4K resolution at 60 FPS with all the bells and whistles attached, including ray trace, everything you can think of. Basically, you just need to manually enable the PSSR in the video settings of the pause menu, which I am very envious of you if you can do that and you do have a PS5 Pro. I'm sure that this game is going to be purring like a kitten now. So, well, you have to let me know in the comments if it does. But what about future updates for Shadows then? Well, the team have said in their patch notes right at the top that there is more new and exciting things coming soon. So stay tuned, which is a lovely teaser there. But we also have the Claws of Awaji DLC, if you didn't know, that is free if you did pre-order the game, and that should be arriving in the next couple months as well. So if you have watched this update video this far and you're new to the channel, do make sure you subscribe, as I will be keeping you up to date on everything regarding Shadows, which I also did for Valhalla, where I covered the game from start to finish over several years. So it would be really awesome to have you along here for the ride. In fact, I've got another no-nonsense Shadows video for you here that I think you may like. So give that a click, and hopefully I will see you there in a second. Big thanks to Nika and Your Back and Donut for helping me with this update video, as well as Peda for the additional footage capture, absolute legend, and Sylvia at the Ubisoft UK team for these awesome threads. They're absolutely banging. A touch of class, as we say here in the UK. Anyway, cheers for stopping by. I hope the video was helpful, and hopefully I'll see you in that next video in just a second.